All right, and welcome to the first lecture of Unit 2. We are shifting our focus from Unit 1, which was about kind of other countries, Spain, Portugal, European countries like that, focusing it to more of the English perspective and the English colonies that are going to be set up. Because, like we talked about in class, these 13 colonies that the English do, in fact, set up are going to turn into the United States of America. And that's important to remember, and that's why we are talking about them right now. So this first lecture is about the early colonies and how some of them succeed, but also some of them don't. Once again, just to remind you, there are going to be things that are in bold and underlined, and that's when I would get out the highlighter and highlight those words, like I'm doing right here on the PowerPoint. But we start with Sir Walter Raleigh. He is given permission to start England's first colony in America. And in 1855 on Roanoke Island, he sets up a colony and calls it Virginia. But Virginia fails due to hunger and trouble with local tribes, so now Sir Walter Raleigh is 0 for 1 in trying to set up successful colonies. He tries again in 1587, and he sets up Roanoke Colony, and this one is kind of a mystery. No one knows for sure what happened to it. They show up back again to check on these people, and there's just no trace of them. Some people think maybe they went off with another tribe, or they were attacked by another tribe that took them and kidnapped them, or they just ran out of food, but no one knows for sure. So he's 0 for 2. In 1607, the English try again, and that one also fails due to hunger. So we are 0 and 3. We have 3 failures and 0 victories or successes for these colonies. Financing a colony. Now, what does this mean for Sir Walter Raleigh to have a record of 0 and 3, if you will? Raleigh lost all of his money when setting up these colonies because, let's say it cost, $10,000 to run a colony, and if he is paying all $10,000 of that money, he is going to lose all of it when that colony fails. So he takes on 100% of the risk, is what that means. Later, people don't really want to take on 100% of the risk. They want to set up colonies through joint stock companies. And this is the definition for a joint stock company. It's where investors, or people that give money to support a project, and in this case it's a colony. So it's when investors would give money to support a colony in hopes of making money off of that colony. Each investor owns a portion of the profit, and each investor owns a portion of the risk. So instead of Sir Walter Raleigh paying $10,000, instead of one person paying $10,000, maybe we have 10 people do $1,000 each. So that way, if it fails, each of them are only out $1,000 instead of $10,000, which is a little bit better. A little less risk, but a little less reward, so you just got to weigh your options. This way, if a colony fails, each person only loses a little money instead of all of their money. Colonies were important for England because England is using an economic system called mercantilism, which means selling more goods than you buy. So in this situation, a country would sell more of the crops that they grow than they spend less money than they actually make on these crops. And this makes a country very rich. And the reason that colonies are important is because what do you need in order to grow more crops, in order to sell more crops? You need more land. And that's where the colonies come in, because now they have an unlimited supply of land in Virginia where they can just plant crops all over the place, farm them, and ship them over and sell them as much as they want. So they're going to end up selling more than they buy. Not everyone could just go over and set up a colony. Joint stock companies had to get permission from King James, who is the king after Queen Elizabeth, and King James would issue charters, or a written agreement from the king saying it's okay to start a company, or start a colony. There's basically two major joint stock companies that are going to be getting these charters. It's the Virginia Company of London and the Virginia Company of Plymouth, and we'll talk a little bit about the Virginia Company here in just a second. The Virginia Company is going to be setting up Jamestown. It's founded in 1607 by 100 colonists. Jamestown becomes America's first permanent settlement in America. So it becomes England's first permanent settlement in North America. That's a very important thing to remember. If you look at this, the Virginia Company is going to have to try to get, these 100 colonists to go over to the New World and live in Jamestown or whatever. But if they have an 0-3 record, England does, of people just going over there and dying or disappearing and not succeeding, what are they going to have to do in order to get those people over there? What they have to do is they have to make it look better than it is. So what they start saying is, you go over here, there's gold all over the place. And, you're just going to get out of the ship and trip over huge gold nuggets. And what these colonists end up doing is they're like, oh yeah, let's go over there and get this gold. They get off the ship in Jamestown, and instead of, finding food or setting up shelter, they look for all this gold, and what happens is many of them start dying. So after a little while, they set up their colony, a lot of them start dying, and then John Smith comes over and helps them out. And when John Smith arrives in 1608, he finds only 38 people remaining. So 38 people are there instead of the 100 that we started with. John Smith puts some discipline into place and kind of puts the colony back on its feet, and then he leaves, and then they start doing terrible again. But then Lord de War shows up, brings order and discipline, and it saves the colony. Now, the other thing that saves this colony, not only do they now have discipline and order, and you need to farm instead of looking for gold all the time, they end up finding a crop that is going to make them very rich, which makes people start to want to farm more, which makes Jamestown a permanent settlement. And that crop is tobacco. Tobacco becomes popular in England. The area around Jamestown was good for growing tobacco, and the colony became very rich. Now, not only do you need more land to grow more crops if you want to sell more and fit into this mercantilism model, you also need to get more people over there to run these farms. So the Virginia Company started offering headrights, which are 50 acres of land if you can get to America. So if you can pay your way to America, when you get there, they're going to give you 50 acres of land. That's what a headright is. Now, if you couldn't afford your trip to America, you had an other option. You would become an indentured servant. Indentured servants would work for free for a few years until they get their debt paid off. This is kind of like going to a restaurant, eating a big meal, and then realizing that you don't have any money to pay for the meal, and they put you in the back to wash dishes until you pay off what basically you spent eating there. These people would get over to America because other people paid for them to get there, and when these people get to America, the people that paid for their trip have farms, and those indentured servants now work on those farms and for 4 to 6 years until their debt is paid off, and then they are free, and then they start their new life in America. Now, these people that are farming and have farms, they're growing these tobacco, and at the end of each harvest season, they would maybe have to pay a tax to the Virginia Company. And maybe one year it's 10%, but maybe the next year it's 20%, and they have no say in this. And that is because they have a lack of self-government. And self-government is what we in the United States have. We vote for people, and those people make the decision that, is going to be best in our best interest, or what we think, or what they think we would want. So they're mad because they don't get to vote on how high the taxes should be, or what taxes there should be. It's kind of like if you woke up in the morning and you unplugged your phone from the charger, and now all of a sudden there's a $5 tax on you charging your phone every day. You have to pay $5. Nobody asked you if that's okay or voted on it or anything. That's how it is. So they want some government. They want some representation. And the Virginia Company decides that Burgesses, which is another word for representatives, would meet every year. So a representative is a little hard to understand if you're not familiar with the government process, but the way I describe it is if the school was going to hold a school-wide vote on something, and they said each person is going to send one person from, or each class is going to send one person from each classroom to go up to the office and vote for that class. So we would pick the person in our classroom that's going to represent the majority of that is going to vote in the same way that the majority of people in the classroom would want them to vote. So if the majority of people in the classroom want to vote yes on this thing, we're going to pick somebody to go up to the office that's going to vote yes. They are going to be representing the feelings of our classroom. That's what a representative is. The representative would meet every year in what's called the House of Burgesses. And the House of Burgesses is the first representative form of government in the colonies. That is important. That is something you need to highlight. And no, for sure. The House of Burgesses could pass laws and raise taxes. What happens to the House of Burgesses, however, is that after a Native American uprising, King James takes over the colonies and turns them into royal colonies. A royal colony is a colony that is ruled by the king and his officials. So the king gets to say what they want and what they want the laws to be and all that kind of stuff. They also get to set what the taxes are, and they get all of the money from all of those taxes. So what King James does is he gets rid of the House of Burgesses, which outrages the colonists. And the colonists protest and they fight, and they're like, we want the House of Burgesses, we want our representation. They protest, and then King James actually dies back in England, and his son, King Charles, becomes king, and he sets the House of Burgesses back up. And Virginians had won this fight for their self-representation, and this is the first time that they're going to win this fight for self-representation. But we will see this again, because on a larger scale, that's what the American Revolution is all about. All of these colonists are going to say, hey, we want our self-representation, and the English are going to say, no, we don't want to give it to you, and then they fight the Revolutionary War, and that's how we become independent, and the United States of America. So that is the first lecture of Unit 2. We will see you in Lecture 2.